Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
And every week, our first segment is a very, very critical and very, very important segment with my beloved, full disclosure, my wife, Lynn Shaw. And she is the founder of Lynn's Warriors. She is Lynn's Warriors on YouTube and Lynn's _Warriors on X. Tonight's topic, big tech keeps selling AI, but the public is increasingly rejecting it, especially for children. And AI, as you know, is everywhere. In fact, a recent survey says that about 82% of the American public rejects AI, from pop-up data centers across the U.S., talk of AI education in the classrooms, Capitol Hill discussing AI nonstop and voting on legislation, sort of. We'll talk about that. And the White House figuring out how to best address the issue. Now, every week there's another announcement, another product, another promise that AI will change our lives. And I'm also going to tell you there's a lot going on right now too, but I don't want to explain this to you. Let's have our guest. She is, of course, the leader, if you will, the founder and director of Lynn's Warriors, my wife, Lynn Shaw. Welcome to Warrior Weekend, young lady.
Good evening, my husband. First, let's start with a big thanks for you for always focusing on what you know we work on at the Warriors each and every day. It is so urgent and so important for the American public to hear about these things that they don't really hear a lot about in the media.
And by the way, one thing too, you talk sometimes about bipartisan, and I know it's sometimes I think it's rather patellar, a bit axiomatic for people to necessarily, whenever anybody hears our Governor Hochul, people say, ooh, but you know what? Shout out to her. What has she done that is noteworthy regarding AI?
Listen, she is the first she's the first governor in the whole nation, Kathy Hochul. She signed the first law against building these massive, air-sucking, water-sucking, electricity-sucking data centers in New York State. The first governor to do so. She does not want these in New York State.
I there's also something too, but I don't want to dwell too much on it because sometimes it's very easy to kind of sound like you want this. But I am sorry to say that I predict, well, I'll put it this way. I want people to be very careful that the anger that people are exhibiting regarding AI and the like is very similar to the anger that people saw with Luigi Mangione and healthcare, and that a lot of, well, you could explain this, a lot of AI from Altman and Anthropic on down are very concerned as to their safety. People, they're worried about sabotage. The public is not embracing AI and data centers at all. Explain.
Yeah, these big tech CEOs worried about their safety, but you know what, Lionel? I am worried about the safety of our children and families in America.
Hear, hear.
With the internet, with online, with big tech, with social media harms. Enough about them with their trillions and trillions of dollars, and they don't even have, look, I don't want to be the morality police here. They don't have the decency to put some guardrails on their product design. Let's talk about big tech as a product design to help everybody with keeping kids safe with this runaway train. There is no regulation. The government is basically in favor of all of this powerful technology, including AI, okay? And we are pro-innovation, pro-technology. I like to always point that out. I also like to point out, you mentioned bipartisan. Yes, and this is the one issue where we have in Washington, okay, and in the states, coming together, Democrats and Republicans, to work on all of this. But here's the thing. Americans are not rejecting technology as a whole. They're rejecting this idea that technology we have learned from the last 30 years of basically the internet born in 1996, that without any kind of common sense safeguards, some guardrails, we have seen what has happened to our kids. okay? The isolation, the mental health, all of this. And you know what? They don't want it with AI, this artificial intelligence. So right now, they are pushing back Americans, okay? They don't want these data centers. They're popping up seemingly in residential neighborhoods, in people's backyards. I do not exaggerate. And people report and send pictures, they make so much noise and they have light. And this is 24 hours a day. And they're just these massive, ugly places. And the state of Texas has the largest, by the way. And follow the thread, please. Senator Ted Cruz is the one voting on August 5th with his Commerce Committee.
Now explain this.
Well, for our Kids Online Safety Act, Senate Version 1748, that we at the Warriors have been talking about and working on for 4.5 years with the American public and families to just have a duty of care. And that means a piece of legislation that says, you know what, big tech, have a reasonable duty of care. You put out a product, do everything, kind of in your power to make it a safe product. Let's keep talking about product design. We're not talking about censorship or what people are talking about online. We're not talking about banning anything down. We're talking about you have a duty of care when you put out a product. I mean, after all, I buy a mattress. It's defective, right? They have all kinds of testing and things like that. You got seat belts, you got bicycle helmets. How about a food product? It goes bad. There's a recall. We have to keep pushing on this, and the public has to know they have to participate and help us contact their legislators. They don't want this AI. And it seems now people are waking up and finding these massive structures in their neighborhoods.
Now, a couple of things here. Let's make sure we do this. AI can be great. AI can actually, if it can help, it can do so much later on. In the area of, now this is if done correctly, in the area of, let's say, radiology and breast cancer detection, what if there was because it learns, it has its LLMs and language models, and it learns, it teaches itself. But what if for example, they say that you could go through some mammography programs can read, can take basically every mammogram that's ever been done and compare it and learn. Women can get results. And so that's wonderful. So nobody is saying stop AI, get rid of AI. That's like saying get rid of computers, get rid of TV, get rid of radio. No. But there's two things. You mentioned the design. Well, first, before I do this, what's the White House doing? What is the administration doing, and what do you suggest President Trump should do?
Well, the first thing I suggest President Trump should be doing is in all of this conversation, okay, in his administration around child safety, he should be having parents at the table. This is the thing in Washington they lack. We have what we call now, unfortunately, it's horrific, thousands of survivor families. Their children have been harmed by big tech, whether it's sextortion, cyberbullying, eating disorders. These kids are no longer with us, encouraged by, it could be a TikTok challenge, things they learned online. Why do we know this? Because a lot of these parents went through their children's phones after their deaths or their journals, and they learned all of this. So in all of this talk, we need to have these parents who bravely have come forward, for those who can't, because there's thousands across our country, and sit them down in the Oval Office and have a constructive conversation, because right now you've got these big tech people around President Trump. They are Silicon Valley. That is their agenda. That is their interest in being a global leader, in ruling the world, in being powerful, and they don't care about the families and the children. So we are urging that President Trump have these parents at the table, part of these discussions. But I want to get back to, I mentioned Senator Ted Cruz and the importance of this Kids Online Safety Act. He is a senator from Texas. Texas is the state with the most, 18 plus more being built of these massive AI data centers. He also is the chair of the Commerce Committee, where our Kids Online Safety Act is hanging right now after all these years to be voted on August 5th. So kind of follow the thread. take what you want from what I just said. But big tech has the money, the power, and that's what everybody wants in Washington. President Trump is surrounded. We saw it at the inauguration. Sitting behind him were all the big tech CEOs. Big tech has certainly helped finance the ballroom they're building and the UFC event. They seem to be involved. And just today, the Warriors, I guess I should say yesterday now, our coalition meeting we do every Friday with Washington, and we learned today, this quarter, that big tech spends $230,000+ per day on Capitol Hill on lobbyists to fight child safety legislation. Now, what does that tell everybody? What does that tell everybody? $230,000+ a day on lobbyists.
You know, it's funny, without going into too specific, sometimes it has been popular in politics to decry big money, different, whether it's big tech, whether it's big agra, whether it was the gun lobby years ago, the climate lobby, certain Middle Eastern people take great offense at that. And that's fine. We're not going to argue the point. This may be, of them all, the biggest concerted effort to lobby and basically control government of all of the various lobbies combined.
It absolutely is. And the White House right now, with all of this out there, with our various, across the country, parents and organizations and the Warriors constantly going to Capitol Hill, going to the White House. Look, the White House by now should launch a nationwide campaign in public education about AI. We've done it with, again, the smoking, the seatbelts, the opioids. Americans deserve straightforward information about AI and chatbot companions and online scams, all of this, and should be coming out of the White House. And they should be bringing together the different administrations like HHS, Department of Education, the FTC. How about educators, pediatricians? Again, I mentioned families, child safety organizations to develop. Everybody needs to come together. Everybody's doing this little piecemeal thing. Nobody knows what the other one is doing. I keep hearing in Washington, well, we don't know what that they're doing there. We don't know. I don't understand. Why aren't they all coming together in the name of the American public? I mean, they work for us. We can't wait. We cannot wait for another generation of kids to be harmed before taking action. It is happening in real time. I do not understand. This is a public health issue.
We're talking to Lynn Shaw from Lynn's Warriors on YouTube, and Lynn's _Warriors on X. I still say Twitter. I still think we need to tell people, whenever people you mentioned about kids being hurt, chatbots, a lot of folks still, as much as conversant as you and I might be, a lot of folks are not. Explain, if you could, what this means and what the threat is, what the problem is as to chatbots. What are chatbots, and why would these companies, or anybody for that matter, have something that is permitted to be in the stream of commerce that tells and suggests to kids to harm themselves, and also not only harm themselves, kill themselves, and I'll even help you write a suicide note. I'm not making this up. So there was a lot of questions in there, but I think it's important that we clarify this.
Yeah, the focus of the Warriors right now is AI, because it is that big wheel with a lot of spokes with all kinds of things. Each spoke represents something different. Now, look, people can become very overwhelmed, and they are. Parents report this to us all the time. Communities report it to the Warriors. There's a lot going on. I want to focus right now on artificial intelligence and our kids. This is what concerns me the most. AI chatbots and companions. These are marketed to kids and young people. Look, we know kids are developing, emotionally and psychologically during their teen years. And these systems, I want to remind everybody, these chatbots, okay, these companions, I don't like those words. It seems like your buddy, your companion. These are machines. These are systems fooling us, fooling our children that can simulate empathy without possessing any, because it's a machine. They don't have any empathy. They are not parents. They're not teachers. They're not counselors. They're not doctors. They are software. machines designed to maximize engagement, because that is what big tech is about. Engagement, advertising dollars, keep the eyeballs on the product. No child should develop emotional dependence on artificial intelligence, software, a machine, and it's happening, and we have to stop it. We have to do everything in our power to educate the public. If you take one thing away from all of this talk about artificial intelligence, let's focus on our kids, our future American adults and leaders, and it's the AI chatbots, AI companions. Talk to your kids. Understand what it is. Do some research. The internet is great for vetting out and finding research. Don't be one of those that says, we didn't have the internet in my day. You didn't have it. I didn't have it. But we know about it. We're conversant. We use it to our advantage. And people have to get on board, because I am afraid, and I never use that word, afraid, of what's going to become of our kids and our young adults in the next 5 years.
You know, what's interesting is a lot of people now are doing this, and I suggest people at home do this. Ask whether you use Claude or ChatGPT or OpenAI or whatever your platform is, but people are actually asking AI programs: are you real? Are you fake? Do you know the answer? Are you controlled? Are you here to harm me or hurt me? And sometimes the responses are shocking, because everybody thinks that they're clear. You've heard about, for example, AI programs hallucinating. You've heard about how in cloning programs, people who are coding, I should say, that the codes are not that great. This is not as foolproof as people think. Now, where do you see this going in terms of, or let me ask you, I'll be back up. Are you seeing enough of doctors and psychiatrists and people weighing in terms of this being a health issue?
No, I'm not seeing it at all. As I rack my brain and think, HHS has to get involved in this again, right, with the White House, with putting a plan out. Look, we had a lot of talk about AI in the classrooms, K through 12, a big launch last year about that. Many teachers report, we don't even know what this is. What exactly is the program? What is the protocol? What is expected of us? Nobody's coming together about all this. It seems to be, again, this just free-for-all runaway train controlled by big tech. And no, there are a lot of good doctors, mental health counselors, educators trying to get a handle on it. But unless we have some sort of uniform where we're all on the same messaging, we're given, the playbook, how can we across this country come together about all of this? Look, recently there was, about a week and a half ago, a massive protest against these AI data centers, okay? Media didn't even pick up on it, basically. It was 42 states who... I know. Oh, of course not. Of course not. With 142 protests saying, we don't want this. We don't want this in our neighborhood. We don't want this for our kids. So unless we have... Can you think of a better way? We need it to come from the top. We need to have a formal kind of, different departments, again, like HHS, Department of Education, the White House coming together. I don't really understand, Lionel, why they're not, except I do understand. And it's a bad answer. It's a bad thought. It's because big tech has the power and the money, and people in Washington like power and money.
I also think that every now and then there's this is just my opinion, Bobby Kennedy will do pull-ups, or he'll talk about red dye number 3, or he'll grab a snake, or he'll actually endorse suggesting beef tallow, actual saturated fat as a form of cooking potatoes. And okay, fine, it's a free country. Out of all of that discussion about methylene blue, remember that the blue dye on his tongue, out of all of this, nobody talks about it. It's still the best kept secret. Let me just explain something. This is what I don't think people understand. You can't turn AI off. Once it gets going, it's not like, see what people think of, they think of ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or this very basic, this is more like LLM stuff and helping you, craft recipes. When this gets going, it is going to, because of this concept called recursive self-improvement, it runs itself. It programs itself. We need people, and you've talked to some of the smartest people around today, explaining how not only is this dangerous, but if you could, explain how sometimes the legislation, after it's been reviewed and pored over by experts, they'll realize it has no teeth in it, or there's a section that excludes. It sounds good, it's got a great name, children's, safety, but it seems like to me, from what I'm hearing, Washington just doesn't seem to care. It's not a priority, or the money is so great they're just kicking the can down the road. Again, a 50 question.
The money is. I'm saying yes to all of what you just said. Working so hard on all of this with a lot of great other warriors across the country. I think Washington really doesn't care. It hurts me to say that. I think Washington is impressed with the money, okay, and impressed with the power, as I pointed out. And let's be realistic. The playbook out of big tech is always blame the parents, right? You see the pile-on I get when I post about Kids Online Safety Act.
Oh, my God. Explain this.
Well, I don't know. Those are bots. I'm sure those are bots employed.
Well, explain. Wait. But explain.
Okay.
But tell people what you are under, that there are bots. I don't know where they're from or where they originate, but you are deluged with people with vicious attacks. And these are, and you can always tell.
They don't get shut down for their vicious language, vicious things they say to me, which I frankly don't care because I'm a warrior. But think about that child who gets a pile on like that. And that's why kids harm themselves. They can't take it. Their brains can't handle this. If I didn't know better, Lionel, right now, I would think, this is me saying this, if I didn't know better, I would think big tech is writing a lot of these child safety bills. Because when the lawyers rip them apart and dilute them, it's all basically in favor of big tech. Okay? They sound good. Why do we need a piece of legislation, that's 1,000 pages or something for some child safety legislation where big tech lawyers can go in and find so many loopholes, okay? Give us 3 pages, you know what I mean, of what it is. Not 1,000, and I'm not exaggerating here, all these pages where they can find a loophole in every other paragraph. So, look, parents, let's talk about this. Parents absolutely have a responsibility in today's world. Let's be realistic. To step up, to understand what's going on, to talk to their kids. You buy a device, you got a responsibility, okay? But no parent can monitor every algorithm, every chatbot, every update, every platform 24 hours a day because these apps and platforms are popping up all day long. We don't, expect parents to inspect every toy or automobile before it's sold, right? I think the toys, though, you're going to have to start inspecting because they're coming out with a lot of AI toys for the upcoming holiday season. But companies have the responsibility to, Lionel, this is the part I do not understand. It is the only business, big tech, there no regulation. Children's safety must be built into products from the start, just like they are for many toys, for many, again, I always use the analogy because people can understand it with the seat belts and the bicycle helmets built in. Why is this big tech allowed to do all of this? This is ruining our country, ruining our society. And the government right now, listen, it's a national security threat. This is it. They are concerned about global domination in AI, and I'm sure China's probably ahead of us already. And so the concern should be on our citizens and on our kids and empowering them. And I just want to mention something. There's terrific AI that could help, tutor kids because we're failing academically in this country, K through 12, that could really empower them. No, and really help teachers, and he's so great. Okay, China uses, for their history and for nature and for all. Why aren't we doing that? And also, there's terrific AI programs that can find all those predators in seconds, right? With all those URLs and things that are always in other countries. And you know what I hear from law enforcement all the time? We don't have the money. We don't have the resources to buy that software. Can you imagine in this country our government cannot provide law enforcement with the resources to help protect our children and families? It's unbelievable. And I hear this on a daily basis.
And we also think, by the way, a couple of things. When it's kind of a cop out when people will say, well, it's the parent's responsibility. Well, believe it or not, like you said, seatbelts. I remember, I think we're old enough to remember that there was a time where we didn't have child safety tops on medication. Now it's a given, but there was no such thing. You had no such thing as that. I remember before we had seatbelts, and nobody said stop driving or stop using medication. That wasn't it. It was so simple. But the thing you have to ask yourself is this: what is it that they have in mind? If you said, if you argued content, if you argued, the subject matter, why would anybody in their right mind take offense at you saying you can't allow, or you must take into account that some of your bots are actually encouraging kids to harm themselves? And what they really want to tell you is either they cannot control that, which is dangerous in its own right, or it was designed to do it. So why do you think they look the other way? Are they planning something down the road which is so nefarious and so scary, where they can turn a switch and you can have, I don't want to be too crazy here, but kids are encouraged to harm themselves en masse? Why would they be reluctant to make it safe from kids harming themselves unless that was the goal?
Again, there is no regulation. They are power hungry. They live in bunkers. They have multiple mansions. Many of these CEOs themselves have admitted, it's on record, we don't even allow our children to be any part of,
Zuckerberg.
Media. But absolutely. But it's good enough for all the other kids. And think about, I mentioned before, a national security threat. What better way than to get your young, to turn against their parents, their communities, their country, is to infiltrate their brains. Now, I would have thought a few years ago, this is crazy stuff, but I'm in it every day, and this is the only thing I can see. And we're seeing that play out, whether it's shootings and kids with knives and kids who don't remember things that they did. And so many kids are in courts. I'm seeing so many stories, Lionel, where kids have murdered their parents. Horrible stories all of a sudden. And you know what? What better way, again, you turn your young on, the elders, and to just ruin society. Okay?
Now, people, as you know,
I can see it and you can see it. I don't understand why Washington can't see it.
You're going to be called a conspiracy theorist, and don't forget, as Gore Vidal says, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy analyst. Lynn Shaw from Lynn's Warriors, lynswarriors.org, Lynn's Warriors on YouTube, and Lynn's_Warriors on X. As usual, my darling, thank you. This is such a critical, crucial, and important issue. We are not going to stop. We're going to make sure people know more about this, no matter how long it takes. Thank you so much, my darling. We will talk very soon. Literally.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Coming up, more on Another Side of Midnight with me,